Hey, stop! I got it. Dave will get me one day. Go ahead, open.
Why does that amuse you? Okay, I'm not even going to worry
You
about it.
gotta
so
have
much.
fun.
Thank you so much for staying tuned, everybody. See how you do that? You just don't torment Dave because he's here to help us.
But I'm helping
And you
Dave on
welcome people
releasing
back,
stress.
thank them for staying tuned, and say that we have been joined by the Delaware Africa Coalition, or Dr. Lawrence and Kevin Coleman from the Delaware Africa Coalition. Thank you so much for joining us, gentlemen.
Thank you so much for having us.
We're very, very happy. We met actually at an event for Miss Dorsey, who was running for office at the time, at
Correct.
the Congos.
Correct.
And we got to talking, and I thought that maybe you should come on and share your story and the story of the Delaware Africa Coalition with our viewers. So how did that get started? How did DAC get started?
Well, DAC actually got started as it's an idea that we've been thinking about for quite some time, but it wasn't until some events about 3 years ago that happened that basically kind of brought it together, crystallized it, and then we kind of ran with it. And those ideas were really about the need to bring together people of African descent that live in this area. When we say people of African descent, Africans, African Americans, Caribbean Americans, you know, so far we're pretty much in our separate silos and so on and so forth. And there's nothing wrong with that, except that on some levels there is need for us to kind of come together. So there were a couple of events that happened in 2015. One of a prominent psychiatrist, actually, a Nigerian psychiatrist, by the way, was killed. And you know, people looked around and they were like, okay, if this was somebody else, maybe there'll be a community around that will be asking questions, because the killer, the murderer, actually broke into her home and basically slaughtered her, right? And so people were like, okay, is there anything we can do? They looked around, okay, you know, what do we do? How can we get law enforcement and people to hold this person accountable and stuff like that? And then they realized that there's a need to have an active community that can actually do that, and at that time we didn't have it. You know, so that was one of the things. Then another thing that kind of followed in very quick succession was that in December of 2015, Senator Coons, you know, sent somebody from his office in Washington, D.C. To come to Delaware and ask the Latino community and the African community how he could serve them better. You know, and we had that meeting, in fact, for the African community. We had that meeting at Elizabeth Seton Church, which is actually where we have our monthly meetings right now. And again, at that meeting, it became clear that there was need, you know, for the community to organize in order to better access resources that are available through the government, and in order also to have a more efficient system for the government to disseminate or transmit information back to the community. You know, so these things and so many other things kind of led us to the fact that, you know, you got to organize. If you don't organize, you're just not going to be able to access resources and things of that nature. So,
right. And I think what attracted me to the whole idea of Delaware Africa Coalition is that I recognize that as an African American growing up in the South Bronx, is that we, you know, I kind of represent the descendants of those that made it through the Mayafa, all those. So really, we become kind of the strongest of the strong just because of the fact that we're here. But when I start to look at my brothers from the continent of Africa, very often their families, they're sending their best here to the United States to cultivate, to achieve things, and to be able to come back. So here we are, all in Delaware, this group of individuals that have so much potential, and why aren't we working together, realizing that potential in a lot of different ways? So I just thought it just made sense to find ways to coordinate that effort and pursue it.
Now, I know you were saying you was thinking about it for a while before you actually started and put something out there. How big is your team that's doing all the work?
well, as you can imagine, I think was it the 80-20 rule or something? You know, 20% of the
It-
people do 80%
ebbs
of the
and
work in anything, right?
Yeah.
You know, so that's just the way it works. So right now we have a relatively small group, but a very effective group, right?
That's
Because
right.
to do this kind of work, you need people who believe in it, who have passion and dedication to it, and that we have right now. You know, in fact, this my friend here for over 20 years is really one of the people. He's been there from the beginning, has really been one of the people who have kind of energized this movement. You know, well, we hope it translates into a movement soon,
right.
because and that's part of what we're trying to do, socialize it to the broader community and stuff. And when we talk about some of the activities that we have done and those that we have planned, you can see why we are thinking that eventually we expect that this is going to be a movement.
So let's talk about the activities that you've done and that you have planned. What are some of them?
Okay, so in fact, let's talk even about this summer alone. So why don't you talk about one of the things that we did this summer with the Mandela Fellows who came over the summer?
Yeah, it was an exciting opportunity. We've been working with the Mandela Fellows, if you're not familiar with the program that President Barack Obama put in place when he was in office, to really reach out to the continent of Africa and identify 1,000 of the strongest and most accomplished people that are doing things on the ground from the age of 25 to 35.
Yeah, 25 to 35,
25
yes.
to 35. And it was interesting because when these individuals are selected, they are brought here to the U.S. They have a summit in Washington, D.C., and then these individuals are distributed all over the U.S., hosted by universities. And so that they can start to see what resources are available and start to interact with their counterparts here in the U.S. And the University of Delaware has hosted a group of these fellows. And so we've been interacting with them over the last few years with Delaware Africa Coalition. And this summer we had a great time. It was so exciting just to really see the quality of these young people and the things that they're doing on the ground, and meeting them from all different countries on the continent of Africa. I even learned something new. Seychelles is an island off the coast of Africa. I had never heard of Seychelles. And I met someone from there that works in the government there. But they're doing so many different things, and they're making a contribution. So it's so inspirational. But we're starting to have an authentic connection to the continent of Africa, working on different initiatives. So we had a great time.
So that's one of the things that we're partnering with the University of Delaware on. Another thing that we did, in fact, this summer, again, the whole idea of Delaware Africa Coalition is really to bring people together, right? People of African descent, regardless of, and how do you bring people together? One of the best things that brings people together is food. Right?
Yes.
Okay, now if you're talking good food, that's even better, right? Okay, so we did for the first time what we call Taste of Africa, okay, which was something that we did at Glasgow Park.
Yes.
In fact, we did that on the 29th of
July, I think.
It was a fantastic event. And again, the idea, and we're going to be doing this annually, by the way. So the idea here is basically, again, when you bring people together around food, music, and other forms of cultural expression, it's a much more relaxed social environment, and people can talk more to each other, and stuff in a more meaningful way. And from there, as a matter of fact, from that particular meeting alone, we've had many people who have joined DAC.
That's right.
As a result, who didn't even know anything about DAC before, and stuff. So, and we continue to plan. In fact, the county executive, Matt Meyer, was there, and he made a remark that, he said this is the first time that something like this is being done in Newcastle County. And we were not even thinking about something like that. But he noticed that, and that's part of what we're trying to do, really impact the community and interact with the community in a different way, but in a useful and productive way. And in fact, continuing in that sense, we have an event coming up in about 3 weeks, on the 27th of October. Okay, which is a Saturday, and again at Elizabeth Seton, where we normally have our meetings. And again, it's one of those things that we have heard over time, right, about the need when you bring people together, they need to talk to each other. From dialogue, you begin to understand each other, and from there, you can begin to overcome some of the things that keep you
notions,
apart.
right, yeah.
Exactly. So we are starting again. This is the first time, and we expect to be doing this from time to time. So we're saying, okay, well, how can people of African descent work together? And what we have done is that what we're planning is a program that we have divided into 6 different themes. Okay, and we're going to have 5 panelists handle each theme. All right. So that, because what we want to do is to get a diversity of opinions, because we never know whose ideas or whatever can appeal to you.
Right.
Okay, so the more people you have talking, offering their insights and so on and so forth, what we really want to do is to educate and enlighten each other in ways that we can now begin to have more meaningful conversations. So that's happening on the 27th of October.
And if there was one thing that you wanted, did you have another question?
Great.
There was one thing that you wanted our viewers to know about the DAC, what would that be?
Want to take a crack at that?
You give yours, I'll probably give mine.
What do you want to know about the DAC? Like I said, part of the thing that really helped us come together, or at least felt the need to come together, is this notion that, in fact, we're all here, people of African descent coming from different places and so on and so forth. We're all busy living life and doing our own things in our own lanes and so on and so forth. But when you look at the way the system interacts with us, the system interacts with us, treats all of us the same way. I don't know, I mean, maybe you don't think about that or whatever, but when the system, when I'm talking about the system, whether it's law enforcement, government, whatever, they don't see a Nigerian or somebody from the Bronx. They see an African American, all right? And so that being the case, why do you have to continue to see each other from, I'm from Nigeria,
Okay.
I'm from, you see, that's the point.
Okay.
I'm from Nigeria, I'm from this. Why don't we all come together, create a much broader network, learn from each other, help each other, support each other, and stuff like that. We think it will be more fun that way anyway. So it's a forum where you can actually get that accomplished.
Yeah, and I think the same way. I want people to know that we should be deliberate about our efforts to come together. It's not something that happens by osmosis just because we want it to happen and maybe even need it to happen, but we have to make it happen. So part of that is coming together to learn about each other. And then you can start to appreciate the strength that you really have. My friend Khaliji, we've been friends for about 20 years now, right? We met each other because our children were going to the same elementary school here in Delaware. And because of that, we found that we had some commonalities. He loves his family, I love my family. His son and my son are best friends now over all these years, but I've learned a lot. Coming from the Bronx, there was no Igbos in the Bronx, or none that I knew of. I didn't.
They were there, but you didn't know.
When we talk about, when I hear people talk about the continent of Africa, they say those people are Africans. Like, what does that mean? Africa's a continent. We talk about it like it's a city. There are many countries in Africa. Just in the country of Nigeria, there are Igbos and there are Hausas and there are Yorubas. So when I interact with my brothers from the continent, they're like, "How do you know that?" Because I learn, I come to appreciate that, and you start to grow. But then you start to find out that there are strengths that you have as well, that you can work together collectively to really drive change. And if we start to have that dialogue, those things start to happen in an authentic way. And that's really what I want us to know. Let's come together and do it for real.
Now, how can people get in touch with you guys, with the Delaware Africa Coalition? I can put the contact information up. I'll do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
That'll be great. Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
With emails,
Absolutely.
telephone,
Okay.
yeah.
Well,
Facebook.
thank you guys very much. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming on the program. We really appreciate it.
All
and we
right.
look forward to, now that you're here, we look forward to having you back on the program in the
Yeah,
future.
and come
We
on
thank
out
you
to
for
the
the
symposium on
opportunity.
Okay, we
the 27th.
Oh yeah, food.
Yeah.
Food.